it is my pleasure to introduce the speaker. Our speaker today is Mr. Robert Mason, the owner and CEO of the Common Black College application. Robert Mason is the founder of the Common Black College application, CBCA. The CBCA is an online application that allows students to concurrently apply to 55 historically black colleges and universities. To date, close to 250,000 students have completed the CBCA from the United States, South America, Africa, and the Caribbean. Mr. Mason received a bachelor's degree in sociology from Virginia State University in 1984, and his master's in public administration from Clark Atlanta University in 1990. He is also a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, Nu Psi chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Robert Mason.
President Abdullah, thank you for that warm welcome. Rector Winstead, other board members, faculty, staff, friends, family, and to you, the students of Virginia State University. I am extremely honored and humbled to be your 2019 opening ceremony convocation speaker. There are a few people, if you will indulge me for a second, that I want to recognize. These people mean more to me than anything in the world. Now, if only I could find them. My mother, Mom, where are you? Might help if I take these glasses off. My mother, Ernestine Mason. My uncle, Paul Reed. My aunt, Faye Reed, who has jinxed me and told me that I better not cry. I appreciate that greatly. Paula Reed, my cousin. My dear, dear brother, Todd Mason. There are a couple other people that I'd like to recognize. Eric Johnson, who has been my childhood friend for over 50 years and was my freshman roommate in Langston Hall. And Ron Neal, who has been an avid supporter of the Common Black College app, and Robert Mason since the very day we met. Thank you, brother. Now, you probably hear it in my voice, and I apologize that I'm a little hoarse. But I am extremely nervous about being here. And I speak for a living to audiences, both domestically and abroad. I have no phobia about public speaking. My fear stems from the fact that we share a kinship, a bond that is Virginia State University. This place is holy ground to me. It's sacred to me. I came here as a narcissistic, self-absorbed 18-year-old, and I became a man on this campus. I fell in love on this campus. I discovered my humanity on this campus. Last night, I took a walk around campus, and I was overcome with a range of emotions. I walked up to the block, Virginia Hall. Now, I don't know how many of you know, because it's my understanding that the fraternities and sororities now do their step shows in the stadium. But in the 80s, we did them in the back of Virginia Hall. And I can remember standing on that block and leading the Brothers of New Side chapter out on the block, and the feeling that I felt. And it always amazed me that, let's say, for example, we announced that we were going to be on the block at 6 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, you could not get on the block. It was just that crowded. We had to send brothers on ahead of us to ask people to move back. People were in the trees. You guys know where the post office is, right across the street from Virginia Hall. People were on the roof of the post office, waiting. Don't encourage. He said, don't encourage you. I understand. That's funny. But let me tell you this. We never disappointed. And then I walked by Langston Hall. And I thought about my roommate and room 0 in the basement. All right, Faye, this is where it might get a little tough. And then I thought about my grandmother, who every Friday sent me a $10 money order. Every Friday. My grandmother was a domestic. She was a maid. But she saw fit to send her grandson, who was the first in the family to go to college, to be sure that she did all she could to secure my success. So you have to understand, to get that money order, my grandmother did not have a car. She lived 15 to 20 minutes from where she lived. From where she worked. She made less than $100 a week, I'm sure. She probably had to catch 3 buses to get that money order to send to her grandson at Virginia State. This is hallowed ground to me. This is sacred to me. That's why I'm nervous. I owe you. I have an obligation to you. I cannot stand here and arbitrarily pontificate about some subject. I owe you. You are a part of my DNA. I am you. You are me. Understand that, people. Please. So I walked past Foster Hall. And I thought about going down to the snack shop. And the first day that I saw her, and I fell in love instantly. She changed the trajectory of my life. And then on the way back to my car, I looked over at Harris Hall, and I thought about Dr. Taylor. And I'll tell you a little story. Dr. Taylor's class this particular semester was full. And it was probably about 40 degrees outside, 2 or 3 inches of snow. And I was late getting to class. So I walked in, and the only seat that was available was in the front of the class. So I sat down, and Dr. Taylor was writing something on the board. So she glanced over her shoulder. She said, "Nice of you to join us, Mr. Mason." I said, "Dr. Taylor, I apologize for being late." She continued to write, and then she finished. And she turned around and was walking towards her desk. And she stopped in her tracks and looked at me. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So she's looking at my feet. So I don't know how many of you know what Stacey Adams are. But at that time, I was a sharp brother. And I was wearing Stacey Adams. And on those Stacey Adams, my Uncle Will, who's no longer with us, had taught me how to spit shine my shoes. So I thought Dr. Taylor was looking at the shine on my shoes, so I crossed my legs so she could get a better look. But Dr. Taylor looked at me with this enigmatic look on her face, and she said, "Boy, are you out of your ever-loving mind?" I'm like, "Dr. Taylor, what are you talking about?" She said, "Son, it's 40 degrees outside, 3 inches of snow, and you don't have any socks on. What is wrong with you?" Now let me tell you something. If there are any Qs in here that are under 25 years old, I am willing to bet they don't have any socks on. They think, I do have socks on, Brother Winstead, okay. They probably thought that this was a tradition. No. I would go to the laundromat and wash. I would take pairs of socks, but I would come back with singles. I never could figure out what happened, so I just got tired of wearing socks. So it is what it is. So Dr. Taylor did that, not to chastise me, not to admonish me, but it spoke to her vested interest in my well-being as a professor. She cared about me, and I'm sure that sentiment is just as prevalent among our professors today as it was then. I am sure that they care about you. So it is against that backdrop that I want to talk about 3 things briefly. First, I want to talk about the deleterious effect of social media and the impact that it's having on us in general and you in particular. And then I want to talk about self-doubt and how self-doubt can morph into fear and ultimately become debilitating. And lastly, I want to talk about the difference between being successful and being great. Now, as far as social media, how many of you, by show of hand, have an Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook account? Raise your hand for me. Okay. How many of you log on to one of these accounts at least 2 to 3 times a day? Raise your hand. Now listen, I know some of you log on at least once because you've logged on since you've been sitting here. So I know some of you are logging on at least once. How many of you log on at least 6 or more times a day? Okay. Some of you are reluctantly raising your hands. But let me share this with you. I read a study not long ago that suggested that over 60% of the people that are posting are exaggerating about what it is that they post. They're fabricating. We're family. They're lying. Okay? And I also read that 30% of the people are being impacted adversely by that because they're reading these posts and thinking that they're less than those that are posting, that they don't have the same quality of life, that they don't have the same self-worth. Now, I own a tech company. I am on our social media accounts checking to see what our social media team is doing every 15 minutes. But I am on there for a totally different reason. I am checking our analytics. I am checking to see how many students are completing the Common Black College application. So I want to implore you. Some of you are allowing what people are posting to adversely affect you. Never allow that information to be used as a barometer to judge your worth. Please. Please. Also, I wanted to say just a few words about self-doubt, because that's one of the greatest things that I have had to contend with. I'm often asked, how is it that I was able to achieve the level of success that I have, being that I come from a single-parent home in a project that was the first, wait a minute, let me back up, because I forgot my mother was here. My mother never allowed us to believe that we were being reared in a project. She created an environment where she would not allow that to happen. Now, my mother, how many of you know what Home and Garden is, the magazine? Okay, really? It's more than I thought. So, my mother's, our bathroom was probably better decorated than most people's living room. So that's the kind of environment that I was raised in. So, but when people ask me, how was it that I was able to achieve this level of success? You heard President Abdullah talk about the fact that we are having students to complete the app, over 250,000 students to complete the app from Africa, the Caribbean, and South America, and the United States. It is because I have learned to mitigate self-doubt. And I'll give you a very practical example. We have created what is known as a Practice Common Black College application. That's a tool for 9th and 10th graders to apply to college. Almost immediately after I came up with that idea, I knew that I was going to start to challenge myself in a way where I was going to ask, how am I going to bring this to fruition? How am I going to make this happen? But again, I have learned to mitigate my own self-doubt, and you have to do the same. It's imperative that you do the same, because self-doubt can give way to fear. Fear gives way to stagnation. Fear puts you in a position where you will not be able to achieve all that you're capable of achieving. So you have to make a concerted effort to understand that when you start to feel this self-doubt, that you can manage it. And I can tell you the absolute best way to do that is through preparation. When you have a test that you're concerned about, that you're anxious about, study. And I guarantee you, you will overcome that self-doubt. Okay? So I want to talk about this whole idea of being successful versus being great. All of you sitting here right now have achieved a level of success, okay? Because there are studies that suggest that students of color are far less inclined to graduate from high school, one, than their peers, and to go on to a four-year institution. So again, you've already achieved a certain level of success. But the success that I'm talking about, for all practical purposes, is the success that you achieve as an adult that's typically measured by how you provide for your family. And that, to me, is inward. Now, let me say this. These are my definitions. You have the right, the ability to establish your own, okay? But these are mine. So as a result of the success that you've achieved at this point, and let's say, for example, you go on and you're in a position where you're providing for your families, yes, you are quote unquote successful. But are you great? Great constitutes you being able to affect change in the lives of others. It's intentional. And there's a story that I will always share no matter where I am. How many of you know who Brandy is? Okay. I used to call her Moesha, but they told me Saturday that I need to call her Brandy. I was at her high school. She wasn't there. I was at her high school giving a presentation. And there were probably about 200 or 300 students in the auditorium. And I've taught a class or two, so I'd like to, or I have a tendency to pick on students that sit in the back of the class. And there was this one student that was sitting all the way in the back. And when I speak to high school students, in order to help them understand the correlation between what they do in high school and what they do in college, and there's a direct correlation between the grades that they get and their quality of life, I'll ask them a question such as, what do you want to drive when you graduate from college? And I started to ask some students. Now bear in mind, I don't know if any of you here are from California. And let me say this, I have absolutely nothing against Californians. I love you to death. I'm in California at least once a month, okay? But this just happened to be in California, and I'm just telling a California story. So I was asking this question. So I asked one student, what do you want to drive when you graduate from college? He said a Lamborghini. Again, this is California. I get it. I asked another student. He said a Bentley. Again, this is California. I get it. One student said a skateboard. Again, this is California. I get it. But I asked the student that was sitting all the way in the back, because he wasn't participating. I said, you in the back, what do you want to drive when you graduate from college? And he didn't respond. I assumed he didn't hear me. So I asked him again, what do you want to drive when you graduate from college? He said, I don't. I'm like, you don't? Now, if you heard somebody say that, wouldn't you be curious to know why? I was afraid to ask, but my curiosity got the best of me. So I said, why don't you want to drive? He said, I expect to be driven. Needless to say, I left that brother alone. But it is that mindset that you need to be great. It has to be intentional. You have to dare to be different. You cannot afford to fall victim to the whims of others. It's imperative that you do all that you can to achieve greatness. So I want to challenge you. When you have successfully matriculated and you have received your degree and you've gone into the world and you have achieved greatness, and someone asks you, where did you attend college? I want you to look them squarely in the eyes and say to them, I hail from Virginia State University. I hail from Virginia State University. Say it with me. I hail from Virginia State University. One more time so they can hear us at Norfolk State and at Virginia Union. I hail from Virginia State University. Thank you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you and God bless Virginia State University.
ladies and gentlemen, please join me in another round of applause for our wonderful speaker, Mr. Robert Mason.